the Paracave Podcast, proudly brought to you by major sponsor Jack's Pale Ale, exclusively available at Parramatta Leagues Club, Shannon Cooney from Glenmore Park Realty, BTZD Clothing, and the official media partner of the Paracave Podcast, the Parramatta Times.
Welcome to another episode of the Paracave Podcast. And now over to your host, Troy Warner, broadcasting live from the world-famous Paracave.
And yes, hello and welcome back to another episode of the Paracave Podcast, and it is the interview-based podcast, and today I have a former player who played with the Penrith Panthers, the Canberra Raiders in the NRL, along with the club that I love, the Parramatta Eels, and also played over in England for the Huddersfield Giants and Wakefield Trinity Wildcats, also represented City Origin as well, was the Dally M Hooker of the Year in 2001, and I am talking about the one, the only, Mr. Brad Drew. Now, a great chat about Brad's career, especially some really good talk about the Parramatta Eels and some interesting coaching methods used by Brian Smith in that 2001 season. Really interesting to hear that. But as for me, a Parramatta fan, obviously I asked about the grand final of that year and some very interesting talk around that one, as well as his playing career at the Panthers, where he started off his career, and also the Raiders, and also talking about his time over in England as well. But some really good chat about his career, the set of 6 questions, the top 10, the quick top 10 as well. And look, I really appreciate Brad for coming on to the Paracave Podcast for his time. He is actually a contributor to the Paracave with a training top from 2001, a little bit of memorabilia that hangs proudly up in the Paracave. So Brad was the first ex-player to come to the Paracave when I invited him over back in 2013. So thank you for that one. As I said, it hangs proudly in the Paracave, and it's got written on it, the first to see the Paracave, so signed by Brad. So thank you very much for that. And also your chat here on the podcast. Now, this wouldn't be at all possible without the help of the support of the sponsors of the podcast. You heard them at the top of the podcast. Jack's Pale Ale, exclusively available at Parramatta Leagues Club. Shannon Cooney from Glenmore Park Realty. BTZD Teamwear. League Tees, the Parramatta Times, the official media partner of the Paracave Podcast. Thank you very much to you guys for your support. I really appreciate it. And look, now it is time to hear the interview with Brad. And as Hindy says,
get a beer, coffee, whatever you want.
Sit back, relax, and enjoy. And let's get straight into it. And today on the podcast, I've got a very special guest. Well, they're all very special guests that I get to talk to, but he did play at the club that I love, the Parramatta Eels, and also played for the Penrith Panthers and the Canberra Raiders in the NRL, and also over in England for the Wakefield Trinity Wildcats and Huddersfield Giants as well. Also played for New South Wales City in representative football, and is also a contributor to the Paracave with a bit of merchandise, memorabilia, a training jersey that hangs proudly in the Paracave. Welcome to the Paracave Podcast, Mr. Brad Drew.
Good morning, Troy. How are you, mate?
Not too bad. Thank you very much for joining me today. Now, growing up, did rugby league find you, or did you find rugby league?
I think rugby league definitely found me. I was a soccer boy. I think this story's been told a few times. I was a soccer boy chasing down the Arsenal dream. That's all I ever wanted to do, play soccer for Arsenal.
Right.
From the age of sort of 5, I was soccer through to 15. I was at Blacktown City chasing the dream down, and then a couple of mates were short of players in a trial game on a Sunday. So asked me to go out and have a game and just fill in some numbers out at Hawkesbury, and went out there and played, and that was pretty much the end of it. Fell in love with it straight away.
Now, being a soccer fan, did you support a rugby league team at all, or was it just a soccer side in those young years?
No, I was a Balmain supporter. Yeah. So Wayne Pearce, those guys, he was sort of growing up, he was the man I like to watch. And Balmain, obviously, a few tragic sort of close games that they missed there as a young kid following them. I remember coming home from Orange on a soccer weekend camp that we played out in Origin, the tournament, and listening to the 89 grand final, so it was pretty devastating.
Yeah, definitely, for sure, especially for Balmain Tigers supporters, one of the greatest grand finals in history. Now, making your way through the grades, I'm assuming, at Penrith, you make your debut in 1993, jumper number 42, believe it or not, against Balmain at Leichhardt. Can you describe what emotions and thoughts you experienced when you were about to make your debut in first grade?
Oh, mate, I remember the whole week, actually, because we'd come off a couple of schoolboy games in the Commonwealth Bank Cup, and I'd had a couple of good games playing fullback there, and I remember walking in the training that week, and Phil Gould was the coach, and, Phil Gould being Phil Gould, sometimes you'd talk to you, sometimes you'd brush you and walk straight past you, but this particular day he'd sort of come up and put his arm around me and said, mate, I've been watching the schoolboy stuff, put your bag in the first grade this room. You're playing first grade this week. So it was a bit of a shock, but it happened so quite fast. There's three of us, myself, Phil Howlett and Colin Murphy, who I'm still really good mates with, made our debut on the same day. And, it was a great week. Remember, we had to catch the bus to the Woolpack Hotel on the game day. Yeah. That was the ritual, Woolpack Hotel, sort of meet up. Then get the go from there to Leichhardt. So it wasn't a great result for us, but it was a great experience. Yeah,
that's for sure. Again, being like a Balmain supporter, what was it like playing at Leichhardt against someone like Paul Sheeran, who was the captain on that day?
Well, that's it, mate. I think I must have been about 70 kilos too. So I remember coming off the bench. We had a few injuries, and it was just. Mate, it's one of those, it's just those moments. You don't remember a lot of it because it happens so fast.
Yeah.
I was way out of my depth. It was only my second year of footy, so I was way out of my depth. And, it just happened really fast. I don't remember a lot of the game, to be fair, because it just, I was still learning the game a lot and definitely wasn't ready for it. But, it took me quite a few years then to get back into that first grade sort of level. Had to sort of learn how to train hard and learn the game a bit more and make some sacrifices, and sort of got back on the scene about 96, 95, 96, yeah.
And Big MG played in that game as well. Did you happen to come up against him at all?
No, I think he got sent off. I think he might have got sent off that game.
Okay. Oh, well, that's handy then. You didn't have to come up against him.
That's right. But, I'm pretty sure, I think it's a game, you probably know more than me. I'm pretty sure he got sent off that game. So I ended up playing with MG in sort of, I think, the back end of his career back at Penrith anyway. So that was good fun.
And what is Big MG like as a teammate?
Oh, he's a funny man. He's good as over around the sheds. Yeah, he's good for the players. Always having a bit of a giggle and a laugh. Obviously, once he flicks the switch and gets on the field, it's a bit of a different story. But fortunate enough to get to sort of run out with him a couple of times. Yeah, so it was good. It was good fun.
Now, you mentioned Coach Phil Gould there just before, and sometimes he'd brush you, sometimes he'd talk to you. Did you have much interaction with Gus as a coach in those early days?
Yeah, not a lot. As I said, he sort of coming through the ranks of Penrith too. We had a pretty good under-21 side, so we sort of made that we were close to making sort of grand finals in those teams. So, some good players coming through at that point, and he did sort of get around and interact at those younger levels during semi-final time, and had a fair bit of input. But generally, sort of, I think it was 93. After he'd had the success, the club sort of had gone sort of backwards a little bit, so they weren't competing like they were. So I think he put a little bit of emphasis back on that 21 side, and unfortunately we didn't win anything, but there was quite a few players that went on to play first grade from that squad. Matt Singh, Matt Adamson, myself, Nathan Barnes, all these guys. So it was a pretty good team.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, at that stage when you were coming back into first grade, Penrith went with Superleague, and that was an interesting time. How much of an interesting time was that for you? Because you're only a young player coming through the ranks there.
Yeah, it was. It didn't affect me too much. Obviously, a lot of money was thrown at some players there, even fringe first grade players. So it just took all of a sudden blokes turning up in new cars to training, and it was pretty funny at the time. I remember Super League put on a big do in the city. Every Super League club had been sort of, whether they were flown down or bus down, we stayed in the city for the night and stayed at the old Pier 1. They had a big function on there, and it was just all the red carpet was thrown out. Everything covered and catered for. It was a circus, but it was, as a younger bloke, it was a really good eye-opener. Seeing blokes like Terry Lamb sort of coming to the back end of their ears, sort of Andrew Eddiehouse and all these great players. The Ricky Stewarts and Laurie, all in the one room, Wendell Saylor, all these big superstars. So it was really interesting time. Obviously, it didn't last too long, but those sort of memories are, they were pretty big. They weren't mucking around, put it that way. They were throwing a lot of money to make it successful, and rest is history there.
Yeah, well, definitely. Well, one of those legends that you speak about was actually in your side, the Penrith side, and that was halfback Greg Alexander. What was it like to play with Greg in the team?
Oh, mate, he was fantastic. The thing was, I had him yelling at me at one side of the ball, Steve Carter yelling at me on the other side. So whoever you didn't get the ball to was always giving you a bit of a spray. So Brandy was the man, though. He's obviously, if he demanded the footy, he got it 9 times out of 10. I learnt sort of, obviously, growing through and getting sort of, being a hooker, you get to see a lot of things first. So once I sort of started to learn the game a bit more and not be sort of not be dominated by those players, I could find my feet and get out and run a bit as well. So it took a bit of time, obviously, not throwing you had to make sure it worked. If you weren't passing it to those players when they wanted it, you had to make sure you were doing the right thing. And if you were running, and you were running for a reason. So, I learned a lot. But Brandy was he was ahead of his time athletically, and just with he was a freak. He could do a lot of things, and the back end of his career, he was just as good. If his body stayed fit, he was always first picked. And I guess for me, having Gowie coming through and blokes like Steve Carter and Greg Alexander, I think while those guys were always fit, I was always potentially coming off the bench. So, and that was the reason actually I moved to Parramatta.
Okay. Speaking of that, Penrith had a few lean years in 98, 99, but then 2000 they made the finals, and you just mentioned there that was the reason to join Parramatta. Had you already made up the mind by the finals time?
Mate, this is I can probably safely tell this story now, but back in the day, I was still contracted to Penrith. I remember my wife and I had bought a property in Jamison Town, and I was at home after training one afternoon, and I was sitting in the bath, chilling out, and next minute the old house phone called, and my wife yelled out to me, "Brian Smith is on the phone."
Okay.
Brian Smith. Tracked me down, had to get our number anyway. So I got out of the bath, spoke to Brian. He said, "I want you to come down and have a chat with us. I want you to be our starting hooker next year." And I said, "Mate, I've still got another 2 years to run on my contract." He goes, "Well, if you can get out of it, we want you to come down to the club." So I sort of went down and met him prior, and he sort of put everything on the table, and he said, "Mate, obviously, if you can do anything around your contract, you can start here." So I went to Penrith and pretty much just said to Mark Levy at the time, I said, "Look, while I'm behind Gowie and these guys, I want to be a starting hooker."
Yep.
I'm happy. I'd really like a release so I can see what's out there for myself. I already knew Para was there; they didn't know, so I sort of told a little bit of a white lie. But they were fine. They understood, and they said they granted me the release pretty much straight away. And the next week I signed with Parramatta. So that's how it all come about. It's obviously, it was a bit surreal getting a phone call from the head coach at your home, but that's how it unfolded.
Interesting, that's for sure. What was it like then playing against Parramatta in that semi-final? And speaking of like current contract situations and with players negotiating with other clubs before their time is up at the club that they're at, how does that go? How does it feel playing against a team that you're about to play for next year?
Oh, look, it was fine. It was business as usual. That sort of never entered your head. Once you take the field and, you forget everything else that happens in your life. So once you cross that white line, even at training, so that's the beauty of sport. Whatever's happening in your life, once you get to training and get around your teammates, everything's forgotten. So it's that period of time where you can actually just focus on one thing, and whatever's happening in your life at that period, you got your teammates there, you're focusing on what you need to do, and obviously when you step on the field, all that's in your mind is playing the best you can for your teammates. So, that was no different. Knowing that I was going there, had played no part in sort of the way we played. I actually ruptured my bicep in that game in the first half. So, ruptured in the first half and didn't realise what had happened and come off after the game. I thought I just got a cork in my arm, but then I come off at the end of the game and half of the top of my bicep was ripped off. So it was good fun.
Yeah, current injury of Mitchell Moses. He suffered in Origin, so he's out for a while now. And then, you signed with Parramatta the next year. Brian got you over there. What was the first difference you saw between the two clubs at the time when you got there?
Oh, he was just... Look, and he was just ahead of the game again. Like, it was the club. Penrith was still relatively early days with that full time. Well, all the clubs were, but Para were just ahead. Like, Penrith was still a little bit behind, sort of getting it to that professional level. Even though we had some good sort of training facilities, just the little things around gear and training techniques, Simo, and that's definitely not a shot at Simo because he was the coach at the time. But Brian was just, everything was laid out again. So his philosophy was if we give the players everything they need, all they got to do is focus on the footy. So all the gear that was provided was above and beyond. Wherever we went sort of stayed while we were away playing, it was always top shelf stuff. Training, it was always just laid on. It's just so professional, but the training techniques were really interesting. I really enjoyed that environment. We come from the old running laps of the river and long distance stuff to real short, sharp stuff with Parramatta, and that really suited me. A lot of skill stuff, a lot of skill games. A lot of it was all just everything you did was based around playing footy. So you were getting fit while you had the football in your hand, which really, I loved that stuff. So that was a great change for me personally, and it took a lot out of it.
How was it playing against Penrith in round 1 of 2001? Fun?
Oh, we smashed them, so it was a good feeling. Mate, an interesting fact, right? So every club. So when I left Penrith to Parramatta, I never got beaten by Penrith any time we played them.
Okay.
And then when I went to Canberra, I never got beat by Penrith or Parramatta whenever I played.
Okay.
And so went on when I went overseas, when I went from Huddersfield to Wakefield. I never got beat by the team while I was playing who I'd previously come from. So I don't know why, but that's just the way it worked out. But I was pretty lucky. I never got sort of beaten by those sides that I'd sort of been through in the past.
So if any team needed a win or needed a player, they'd choose you, and then if they need to end a bogey against a side, they get you signed on board.
Oh yeah, it was just the way it worked out. I don't think there's any science behind it. That's just my little trivia fact.
That's very interesting. That's for sure. Well, that start of the season in 2001 was a bit up and down for Parramatta, but then the game against the Tigers at Leichhardt, Parramatta won 66-12. What do you think clicked then? Because Parramatta won 7 straight and really turned the season around.
Yeah, I'm not sure I don't know where. Like, obviously, we had a couple of draws. There's 2 out, a win and a draw. I remember the Roosters game because Roosters were. I remember we were playing them on a Friday night, and Brian was still trying to work out how good we were as a team. He knew he had something special there, but he wasn't sure. And this particular night, I remember it turning up, and again, whether this would happen these days, I don't know. But I turned up. We all turned up, basically before the game, and during the week, he said, "I'll not give you a game plan. You guys just give us a free rein to go out and do what we wanted against the Roosters." And we ended up beating them, and we won. And I think from my recollection, and again, it's a long time ago, it's sort of at the end of the game, he said, "I just wanted to see what type of team I had," and because the players were fantastic, everyone got along. Like, we had a bit of a mixture of Jason Taylor with the experience. Michael Buton had been at the club previously, but then we had all these young players that were just freaks that were coming through, like your Jamie Lyons and Pat Richards and Luke Burths and Heinies and both Hindmarshers, Nick Vella. And everyone just got along off the field. Like, everyone enjoyed each other's company. It was a great environment to train at. So I think everything just seemed to click. So it was still my most, some of the best memories of my whole career have been at Parramatta for sure.
That's certainly a interesting coaching philosophy, that one. Just leave it up to the team.
Yeah, he did. And I just remember him saying in the change rooms, "Boys, go out there and play. I haven't got a lot for you tonight. So I just want you to get out there and work it out." So whether that's how I recall it, whether or not any other player does, and I don't know if Brian would have his own version of how that went, but I just remember, I think he was just trying to work out how good we actually were, and and it turned out we were pretty fair side.
Do you think maybe if a team's going through a bit of a rut, then potentially that could be a thing to do for a team? Like, the coach just say, "Look, I don't have a game plan. Go out and play football."
Yeah, I do, because when I went to Huddersfield, I think it was my second year there. Might have been 06, 07 maybe, but we had a really good pre-season and we had a decent team. And I think the first 6 rounds of the year we'd lost we were losing by about 2 points each game, but our defence was really good. We weren't leaking any more than 18 points, but we'd lose 18-16 or something like that. Yeah. And these against your St Helens. And so I remember the coach, who was an English guy, sort of caught a few senior players in, because we were doing the same things at training. He was trying to push us harder to get the results. Okay. And the players could feel that we could turn it around, but we needed a little bit of ease up at training. Basically, a few of us said, "Let's just make training fun and take the pressure off a bit." And that's what happened. We turned it around. We ended up winning 7 or 8 in a row after that, just by taking just by relaxing a little bit. So obviously, it doesn't work everywhere because you've got to have the players to do it, but you need to recognise when what you've got, and that was Brian sort of bringing players in. He did a lot of research on who they'd bring to the club and how that environment would look, and he definitely got it right those couple of years with the players that we had. Unfortunately, we sort of salary cap restrictions had to move a lot of players on, but it certainly would have been a club I would have loved to stay at long term.
Well, yeah, we would have loved to have had you there long term, that's for sure, because Parramatta go on to make the grand final. Now, I don't really want to talk about it too much because it's a game that I haven't watched too much. I've never watched a replay. I was there. What was the atmosphere like in the week leading up to the grand final, and how did you prepare mentally and physically for such a high-stakes game?
Yeah, again, this is my personal take on it. I remember we beat the Broncos, and this is no swipe at anyone at all. This is just my version of it, and I understand why this happened. So we played the Broncos. We beat them on the Sunday at Homebush, and obviously to make the grand final. And we were just heading home as normal, and then we got a text saying we need to be down at Wollongong, down at the Novotel by midnight. So we sort of rushed home from the game, and my wife had a young boy, Harry, as well, and had to pretty much pack up and head to the Novotel. Now, I understand the reasons and the philosophy behind it from the coach, because we're already such a, there's so many young players. Brian's sort of theory on it, he wanted to just get us all out of the, out of that limelight.
Yep.
And so I guess, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, aren't you? So, I mean, there's no excuse. I just felt the rhythm, the routine of the week for me personally. I always wanted to go and do extras on my day off down at, Alan Wilson or Craig Catterick.
Yep.
We'd go and do some extras during the week, and that was how I would mentally get up and prepare, just knowing that I've done something on my day off. But down there, we didn't touch the footy till late in the week because, obviously there's still media down there, and we're out of our training environment, and it was all new to everyone. And I think we just for me personally, I just thought the routine for me probably wasn't the best way to prepare. But again, it's no excuse. We'll give it every opportunity, but it's just probably if I could rewind that week and do and have a say, and things would, I would have preferred just to be home and stay in the same routine and, do your training. And obviously you're going to have, there's media commitments and whatever. But for me personally, I probably would have, had we had a won, you would never be saying it. But it's, and again, it's so hard as a coach to know what's right and wrong until after the event. So, whether he's reflected on Brian has reflected that on himself, I don't know. I don't know how the other players feel about it. And again, it's nothing we've ever discussed. And certainly, I'm not making an excuse why we lost, but I just think because I had probably one of my worst games of the whole year, that game. So, looking back at it, knowing now I'm a bit old and looking at it, it's and I hadn't given a lot of thought over the years, but I think maybe if their routine had been normal for me, I probably could have played a lot better, and whether that's an excuse or not, I've got to live with all that anyway. So
I've always thought that if the game was 5 minutes longer, Parramatta wins that game. Do you think that as well?
I think
came storming back.
I think it was 2 minutes longer. I think if we had another minute to, just a full set at the end, even, if we had another minute, I knew we were charging home, but, I mean, you can't, that's the thing, you can't, we lost it in that first half.
Yeah.
Can't win it in the first half, but we definitely lost it in the first half, so it's a tough road home, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And then after the game, how did you cope with the disappointment of losing the grand final? And
mate, it was sad. It was a great week. It was sad. We did a big sort of fanfare at the stadium the next day. I don't know if you would have been at that, but we went back to the Paris Stadium. We had heaps of fans there just sort of welcoming us. We were back at the club afterwards, and the supporters are just huge. The Parramatta supporter base is massive. I just when they're going good, they you get anywhere in the state or even Brisbane. Like I remember playing up in Brisbane, and we did a promo at a shopping centre. There was thousands of these Paris supporters there.
Yeah, okay, wow.
It was just phenomenal. So the Parramatta supporter base is just huge. While they're going good, it was phenomenal. It was a great couple of years there, and the fan base were excellent. So they certainly got out and supported us when we lost, and they were there sort of, there for us. But it just wasn't to be. It's unfortunate.
But then no doubt, I guess, a little consolation and something that was probably pretty special for yourself was winning the Dally M Hooker of the Year in 2001. Oh yeah, look, that was a personal, a very happy and proud moment for sure. I remember probably the most disheartening thing personally, I haven't told a lot of people this either, is after the grand final. I remember early in the year when I got picked for the city countryside, our trainer told me, because he was around, he said, mate, you've been picked. And this is before the team had been read out. I said, oh, right. Okay. I said, well, he wouldn't be telling me unless he knew. Yep.
So anyway, the team got read out and I'd made the city side. And then after the grand final, he said, mate, look, any consolation, you've made the kangaroo tour. I know you've lost the grand final, but I know that you've been named in this kangaroo tour. So next day, we were sort of doing our Mad Monday, and then they read the Australian side out, and myself and Ryan Girdler actually missed out. We weren't named. And that was the most devastating part of the weekend for me. Apart from losing, and there was a little bit of being personal accolade, I would have loved to go on a kangaroo tour, but being told you're on it and then not to be named, that, mate, I pretty much went home in tears straight away.
Yeah, definitely.
Apart from, again, it's probably a selfish thing, but it's, I wish I hadn't have sort of known that. It's still haunts me to this time, but and whether that grand final played a part in that, that change of selection, which I could understand, because it certainly wasn't a game that I handled well enough for the occasion. So,
how then did you get through that mentally? That little period there of missing out selection.
Yeah, it was tough. Obviously, I just thought, and I think everyone thought, given that we still had the basis of the team, that things would just roll around and fall into place again next year.
Yeah. Okay.
So I guess, given that we'd lost the grand final and that, again, that can't, I was just looking forward to getting back into it the following year, and given that, there wasn't real many changes. We had a couple of new faces come in, but we were just all expected to go on and get back on the horse and do it all again. But footy's that tough a sport, and things change quick, and we just weren't the side that we were previously. So, we had a bit of an up and down year.
You mentioned Brian Smith there plenty of times there. Have you got a go-to Brian Smith story, one that stands out for you?
No, not really. He was, they're still using coaching techniques and programs that he introduced those early days, mate. He's, as I said, he was way ahead of the time. He was a smart coach, and as coaches, honestly, they're still using some of the stuff. I'm still around footy with Penrith, obviously, now. And some of these junior programs, even the Penrith program that we run, is still based a lot on what Brian had introduced at Para.
Okay.
It's phenomenal sort of how advanced he was and how smart he was as a coach.
Yeah, definitely. Well, another Parramatta legend and probably my favourite Eels player of all time is Nathan Hindmarsh. What was Hindy like as a teammate, and do you have a go-to Hindmarsh story?
Ian was the better, mate. Ian was the best. Hindmarsh.
Okay.
Mate. Come on. No, look, they're great fellas, both of them. I ended up going to Canberra with Ian, but Nathan, Nathan's Nathan. Mate, he actually hated the media. So to see him doing what he does now is because he was really shy of the media when I was there. Didn't want anything to do with them. It was really hard to get an interview out of, and basically, obviously Brian Fletcher's made his career for him. But they're good fellas, mate. Just great blokes, and there's probably a couple little Hindy stories, but they're probably not for this podcast, and they're not what you think either. It's probably a bit of it's just some funny situations, some funny moments in change rooms and stuff like that. Mick Vella was a funny man. He was one of the characters in the change room. So, but everyone just got along so well. It's everyone got along so well and had a laugh. But when it was time to train, everyone just got into it. Mate, Hindy was amazingly fit. That probably one story for Hindy is I remember he'd done a bulging disc in his back. And he'd been out for like 10 to 11 weeks. This is pre-season. Come back, we were doing the yo-yo test we're doing the beep test.
Oh, yes.
And, Hindy come back and he looks deceiving. You look at his body, you think this bloke's going to struggle here, but he ended up just smashing everyone in the beep tests. I think they used to do lactic acid tests and he was through the roof. Like he just, his testing results on some of those things were just off the scale. So when I'd be sort of let's say I did 10 100-metre sprints, my legs would be blowing up with lactic. He had the capacity just to keep going. So he's a bit of a freak genetically. Ian was the same.
Hello, Paracave podcast listeners. My name is Shannon Cooney from Glenmore Park Realty and long-term sponsor of the Paracave podcast. If you're looking to sell your property or buy, or just curious to know what your property is worth in today's market, give me a call today on 0421 588 445.
Yeah, would I be right in saying I did hear once upon a time about a story about a rug or a water fountain one day at Hindy's house or something like that? He was looking after a house?
Oh, that's when he was on the... Yeah, He'd been away. He was on away. He'd been away the Australian side. He was overseas, so he was living with Daniel Wagon and
Okay, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Andrew Ryan at the time down at Bella Vista there, or around that way, Borkum Hill somewhere. And there was this water feature next to the TV. It had the glow stuff and like the floaty stuff in it, and it stood tall and it was full of water. Anyway, I'd slept the night. We'd been out on a bit of a pre-season drink together, and I woke up. I was on this beanbag in the lounge room, and as I got up to get myself ready, I tripped on the beanbag and fell straight in this water feature and smashed it all over the floor. Like, the water just went everywhere, and I was just, oh God, I couldn't believe it. And I hadn't met Hindy at this point.
Okay, yeah, well,
what's he going to say about this? So anyway, I got home. Whatever it cost, I said to my wife, so I think I had the boys $500 and smashed this. She was blowing up, and finally got home, and he said, "You're a little bastard, smashed me water feature, were you?" Yeah.
Oh, funny. You mentioned salary cap restrictions before. Was that the move to Canberra in 2003? Was that the reason?
Oh, look, I think so. Yeah, I definitely. Look, I think there's always, if the club would always find a way, but I think I got offered a 3-year deal prior to the grand final. I guess what I was saying now, I did have an offer, an extension to stay, and Brian had sort of already spoke. We sort of sat down and mentioned that I'd love to stay, and we sort of pretty much agreed how long. And I said, basically I just said, let's just wait to see where the season finishes, and then we can worry about it afterwards, So yeah. I think during that time, whether he realised or whether his opinion had changed, or whether whatever, for whatever reason, it turned out there was like 13 of us coming off contract. So
yeah, that's amazing.
Everyone was looking for an upgrade, obviously. I was certainly looking for an upgrade. And it just turned out like myself, Ian Highmarsh, Andrew Ryan, Adam Mogg, I was offered the same money that I was on, or maybe less to stay. And, obviously I was thinking, coming off a couple of decent years, I sort of wanted to try and sort of make a bit of money out of it. Canberra sort of come in and, sort of end up going there. And it's the first time I went somewhere for money, and it's probably the last time I ever did that as a player. I just chased the money. I'd sort of, if I could have the environment back at Para anywhere, I certainly would have stayed for less, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult situation, isn't it? Because you've only got a short time in the game, and you've got to obviously earn as much as you can in that short time. So loyalty these days, you don't see as much or as many one-club players these days either. Yeah.
It's just such a business too now. So there's so much happening behind the scenes, salary cap-wise and business-wise, and even with the juniors. Like, I mean, I can understand, like, as a club, when you've got, like, Penrith at this stage, you've got a couple of really good young fullbacks coming through. And you look at players like Liam Ison, who just made his debut for the Sharks on the weekend. He was one of them. And when you got Dylan Edwards in front of you, you got to, and even Isaiah Katoa looking at his move.
Yep.
Sometimes you've got to decide, I want to go now, or do I wait? You never know the right answer until you've actually made the move. And for me, hadn't I'd known what I know now, I definitely would have loved, like, I would have stayed at Para for less. But, when you're younger and you've got a family to support, and when you're looking, like, you don't think about it because you just do it.
Yeah,
you don't know the outcome until you've done it. You think you're going to be in the game forever, but it just goes so quickly. It's only when you stop and it's all over that you reflect and go, I wish I had done this and that. So it's, you never know whether you're making the right move at the time. You're going with your gut instinct. And, I moved from Para to Penrith from Para to Canberra. And we had 2 really good years there. Game off the grand final down there. We made the semis a couple of years in a row. And, we had a really good side. And, it's unfortunate that, we couldn't sort of win anything down there.
And playing halfback as well down there in Canberra, most of your time down there, did Matt Elliott see you as a halfback and not a hooker?
Oh, they saw me as a halfback there. Okay. Because they're losing Brett Finch, and I think I played the last few games at Parra at halfback towards the back end, and they needed to fill a halfback spot down in Canberra. And when I knew I was going there to play halfback, and even though I didn't want to, I certainly was always found myself, I preferred hooker.
Yeah.
But I think knowing that I'd played there and I could handle it, it's just, look, to be honest, it was a move that I was still in love with the club at Parra. The first time I had to move away from any family to a club, where we were down there on our own as well, as a young family. So, there was challenges, but these are excuses on me. I probably didn't train as hard as I should have down there. I got caught up in the golfing lifestyle down there. So many beautiful golf courses. So I just didn't have the right focus areas personally. So that was all on me. That. Still had a couple of decent years there, but I certainly don't regret where I wish I'd have just put my head down and trained and realised what I had in front of me. So it's certainly another life lesson for myself.
Well, definitely a further move after Canberra, after your 2 years there. You went over to England to play in the Super League. Was that something that you always wanted to do?
Yeah, always wanted to play over there. We went 97. We went over there with Penrith with the World Club when that World Club part of Super League stuff was in. We had three and a half weeks over there in the UK. We played Bradford, St Helens, and Warrington, and just loved it. Loved the experience, and I knew one day I'd definitely want to go back and play. I had 3 contract at Canberra, and I asked for release in my last year.
Yeah.
And again, that was down to me. I just had to. I think if I had to either knuckle down there in Canberra or I'd have a change of scenery. So I thought it was just the right time to go to the UK and start a fresh challenge, and that's what I did. I loved it. Went to Huddersfield, mate, and immediately loved it again. And I got Player of the Year 3 years in a row at Huddersfield, and I really loved it.
Well, one of those highlights, no doubt, playing for Huddersfield was making the Challenge Cup final. Unfortunately, a loss against St Helens, but no doubt a highlight and pretty special to play in, a Challenge Cup final.
Yeah, definitely a highlight. We were huge underdogs. I remember we beat Leeds in the semi at Odsal, which is Bradford's home ground, which was a major upset. We beat them. That was huge.
Yep.
But that was the beauty of the Challenge Cup. Everyone... it's a great competition. I really love playing in it. But to beat Leeds, we had to knock off one big scout, which was Leeds, because everyone expected Leeds St Helens sort of final. St Helens were a great. Daniel Anderson was coaching St Helens at that point, and Alan Wilson was the trainer. So they were again a very good club. And look, we were probably happy as a club just to get there.
Okay.
We had a really good first half. We were right in it, but cream just rose to the top in that second half, and they ran away with it.
Yeah, definitely. Some of those players in that St Helens side, Jamie Lyon, Jason Kalis, and a young James Graham as well.
Yeah. Sean Long was the halfback. He was in his prime at that point. Wellens, they were a good team. And obviously had a good coach as well.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, you moved to Wakefield as well, the Wakefield Wildcats, and you played footy with former South Sydney coach Jason Demetriou. What was he like as a player? Not many people would probably know that he played rugby league.
Yeah, no, he was the heart and soul of Wakefield, that's for sure. He was there, spent his whole career there playing. Just trained hard, mate. He was just a competitor. And I look, and again, we had what was his coach's name? The coach at the time, I forget his name. He's going to hate me for that. He was a really good fella. But he was sort of, he's a bit of a motivator, the coach.
Was it John Keir?
John Keir, that's him. So he was a motivational coach. Technique-wise, he sort of let us, he wasn't that type of coach. So Jason and I found ourselves coaching a lot of the stuff, especially good ball stuff ourselves.
Okay.
So I could tell Jason, again, like he was sort of, between him and myself, we'd run a lot of the good ball sessions and stuff like that. So I could tell, coaching-wise, he was going to go down that path. So But John was a great coach in his own right. He's just real motivational, wore his heart on his sleeve, just wanted everyone to put their best effort in. And that gets you a long way, certainly gets you a long way. We made the semis for the first time in a lot of years at Wakefield and had a couple of good seasons there. And enjoyed playing there. The field was the old style field, which I really loved. The community, I didn't have to move from where I was.
Okay.
It was so my family didn't have to move. It was a local derby, so probably 25 minutes away from where I lived. So it was easy, yeah. And
what were those English crowds like? I can hear they get pretty parochial. Some even have a player song when they score a try.
Yeah, they get into you, mate. They do get into you. Luckily, I wasn't on the back end of a lot of songs going at me. So, but I know when I went to Huddersfield, because they used to do a player rating every local paper. They did a player rating. The first year I was at Huddersfield, I remember getting over there, and my family had turned up, and my two sons got the chicken pox.
Oh.
And in the UK, that's the English just love. They said, well, I'll just say we'll come over and let everyone get infected. They all wanted to get it out of the way.
Okay.
But I didn't realise I hadn't had it. So we were playing round one against Lee. Lee just got promoted and they were in their own old stadium. And I remember training. I wasn't feeling real right. I thought it must have just been nerves. But I went and got my hair cut. And as soon as he put the clippers on, I just hurt. Okay. So I woke up the next day, face covered. I had the chicken pox.
Okay, wow.
So I rang the coach. I said, mate, I've come down with the chicken pox. I was just expecting to say that, no worries, we'll see you when you're okay.
Better. Yeah.
But he goes, oh, that's okay. You just can't get the team bus. I'll get the chief executive guy to pick you up.
Okay.
Said, all right. So I'm playing. He goes, yeah, you'll be playing. You'll be all right. So anyway, so I get down to Lee. First experience was freezing cold, raining, blowing a gale, and we're at this old ground, and the ground was just full of mud.
Yeah.
And I'm warming up, and then the floodlights go out. So we're warming up in the dark on this muddy ground, and obviously I just left stadiums. I think we played our last semi at Sydney Football Stadium.
Yeah.
Think, what the hell am I doing here? What am I doing here? Chicken pox,
play rugby,
muddy ground, no lights. Wife goes, whatever you do, just don't get interviewed. So I think I got man of the match in that game, and they interviewed me after the game. I had this face full of chicken pox and mud all over me. But no, it got better from there. But I got really sick from there. I kept playing, but I was just down on energy. And going back to these player ratings, but I was getting 2 out of 10 for the first, for a month, because I was just so drained and sick. They didn't realise.
Okay, yeah.
And then I sort of come good after about 5 weeks, and I ended up I think my first 3 years at Huddersfield, I got Player of the Year 3 years in a row. It was brilliant. The crowd were great, and fans were super.
Yeah, they fell in love with you after that, that's for sure. They must have had a laugh when they found out that you had chicken pox.
I don't think many knew. Okay. I don't think many would have known. So it's because I didn't realise, I'd obviously never had it. So I just got so drained, and just sort of, you don't know how to handle it. You sort of turn up the training, it's probably not doing you any good either.
Funny. Well, the transition from playing into retirement, was that a difficult one for yourself? Because you've been, week in, week out, playing in a team environment, and then now you have to fend for yourself in retirement. Was that difficult for you? Or an easy transition? No,
it's definitely had its challenges. Obviously, I was pretty lucky to have the long career that I did, sort of going back to 93 at 17, playing first grade, and then I retired at 35. So 93 to 2010, even though it wasn't it was being around that grade, I was sort of around that grade in the first grade squad from a pretty young age. So to get all those years out of your body, now I need two knee replacements now, but it's nothing that you would change. So I didn't retire with any regrets, because I got every ounce of playing out of my body that I could. So the fact that I wasn't forced, I wasn't retired through to not being wanted, I wasn't forced to retire. It was just my body just couldn't go anymore. Yeah. I guess there's satisfaction in that as a player mentally, that you didn't retire on your own terms, but you weren't forced by a club to say, mate, we don't want you. It was just, you made your own choice. I made a decision to retire. I would have retired in 2009, but I ended up signing one more year back at Huddersfield. So, again, that was, sort of stop-start year with knees, injuries and surgeries. So, but that got me into coaching. So I ended up coaching the junior side at Huddersfield sort of while I was injured and sort of playing and injured. Nathan Brown was a coach. So it was more, Nathan let me pretty much do what I needed to do. I was ready to play if he needed me, but it was more just to help some of the younger boys as well. So it was pretty good like that.
And you mentioned there before playing for Wakefield, and then was that the inkling of that you wanted to become a coach after playing?
Probably more so. Yeah, but probably more so that back at Huddersfield when I sort of fell into that role. Because I was injured, and they said, our academy the coach had left, the academy coach had left, and I sort of said, look, I'll coach them, because they'd training of an afternoon, we'd train during the day, and of course I was injured most of the year. I said, look, if I'm not playing, I'll happily coach them. So I ended up, and that was probably that was the catalyst there. Just sort of got a taste for it and sort of then come home and, kept coaching from then on.
And these days, what is keeping you busy these days? What are you up to?
Real estate. So I've been in real estate for the last 10 years or so.
Yep.
I've sort of just resigned, actually. I just resigned from the real estate world. I'm at the crossroads with footy. I'd really like to get in a full-time role somewhere. I've sort of sent a proposal to Penrith with with some ideas of where I could fit in there. Now, whether anything comes of that, I don't know. But, in fact, I've also sent the same thing to Parramatta. So,
Jason Riles is looking for some assistance.
Yeah, well, not only that. Look, I mean, that would be great, but there's probably some more. There's
junior
just some multiple roles, some junior stuff, some coaching. I think there's the multiple roles you can cover. So I've sent that to Adam, Mark O'Neill as well. So I'm hoping, who knows, something comes of it. I've sort of left it in the universe hands to see what happens with that. So certainly a path I'd like to go down there.
Oh, well, good luck with that one in the future. Now, at the start of the podcast, you mentioned that you were a soccer player, and obviously the bloodlines have flowed down to your son, Jed. He's playing in the A-League. That must be a proud moment for yourself to see him play A-League soccer.
Yeah, definitely, mate. I love following his career now. And, they've actually got a game tomorrow night. They're playing the first Australian Cup game down in Canberra.
Okay.
So my wife's actually down there working. She's a teacher. She's sort of delivering some mental health programs around the state, and she just happens to be in Canberra tomorrow night. She's going to get to the game, which is great for him. So that's the start of their season. They've been back in pre-season a few weeks. So, looking forward to watching him,
Was that the path that he wanted to go down and not the rugby league path like yourself?
Mate, that was the 6 years in the UK. He had no choice. All his mates were soccer players. All the schools that he went to just naturally was all just soccer. So I don't think he really had a choice. Not that he wanted, he loves it. He played a little bit of footy at school. But when he was up against blokes like Joe Suwali at year 6 and year 7, he gave that a wide berth pretty quick. Stuck to his soccer. So, he loves his soccer. He's been at it. Both my sons play. And that's just the English influence for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we wish Jed all the best in his career, that's for sure. I've got a listener question, and it comes from a S. Carter of Penrith.
Carter?
Yeah, I'm assuming it's Scarts, Steve.
I thought he was in Bali.
Oh, well, he might be, but maybe at the time he said this, he was in Penrith. But he wanted me to ask you the fact that you love visiting Fishwick when you played in Canberra. What's that all about?
That's a gee up. That's where you get all your white goods from and your firecrackers. So, it was a good place to go and get your white goods. And illegal firecrackers to bring home. So
Right.
yeah.
Okay. Well, if I ever get him on the podcast, you can have a square up. I'll ask you about a question about him. But...
Well, I'd only used to follow him wherever he went because I was a young bloke. So yeah, wherever he went, I went. So
there you go. Must have been his favourite place then.
Yeah,
down
exactly.
There too.
Exactly.
Time for some common league questions. Other than your home ground, did you have a favourite ground that you used to love playing at?
Home ground in the NRL or?
Oh, yeah, either. Yeah.
I grew up playing on Richmond Oval as a kid, so I played cricket and footy on Richmond Oval, so that was always fantastic as a kid. I did love playing at Parramatta Stadium. That was 100% one of my favourite stadium to play at, definitely. But then in the UK, all those older grounds, the old St Helens ground, the old Wakefield ground, Castleford, I used to love playing in those older fields. So, yeah, look, every stadium's different, but I still like the old stuff.
Yeah.
Obviously, the new stadiums now are fantastic. Just the ones that had character. Obviously, Para was always full, so it was always full of, it's always great environment. So, enjoyed playing there.
What about a least favourite? Was there one that you hated playing at?
I used to find playing at Newcastle was always really tough up there.
Yeah.
It was just a tough ground to play at. Obviously, when you got Joey Johns on fire and the crowd behind him, it was always tough to play there. And Manly was a ground I didn't enjoy playing at either. So probably those two.
Yeah, they get most of a mention, but seeing as though you played for Canberra, that gets a mention as well. So I know that's probably why you didn't say down in Canberra because you.
I didn't mind Canberra. Yeah, no, I didn't mind it. It wasn't. I didn't mind playing there. It was always a good field. But I didn't mind playing there at all. It's Manly and definitely Knights. They were probably the two ones I didn't enjoy too much.
No, they come up a couple of times as well. Now, I've got to ask you about a nickname whilst you played. What is Brad Drew's nickname?
Mate, I had heaps of nicknames.
What's the most common one?
Well, the one I hate the most, which was invented, it was John Cartwright come up with it. Well, I went on my first ever trip away with him at the end of the season. We went to the Gold Coast. And because I was like young and all these blokes had been around doing it forever, I sort of followed them around like a bad smell,
Okay,
So
soak it all up, get the experience.
Yeah, so I remember we're out somewhere, and I used to wear a hat. I always wore a hat, and I must have been annoying them one day because everywhere they'd turn, I'd pop up, I'd be there. I remember Cardi goes, "Fuck, Drewy, fucking Dicky Doodlehead," he called me. It's sort of a reference to Dickie Neoff Saturday. So he just rolled off his tongue and everyone laughs. Whenever you get a laugh, it just sticks. So I copped that for a couple of years, and then that's one I didn't like. But he sort of, obviously you see now, he doesn't call me that now. But that was probably the worst one I got.
I have heard, and I don't know if you've heard it, but Mr. Potato Head as well.
Yeah, that was Daryl Broman's. Yeah.
Oh, was it the big
one?
Yeah,
I don't know. I can't see any resemblance there. I haven't got a mustache. Obviously got years. But he come up with that one year. Him and Ray Hadley, I think. So
okay.
My wife used to hear it, and she said, "I'm phoning in." She wanted to phone in and take him on one year. Look, whatever you get, you just got to run with. Like the more you fight it, the worse you get it. So you just roll with the punches. Yeah,
that's it. Who was the hardest player to tackle or play against in your career?
For me, Gordon Tallis was a scary human to play against. You know what? The players got, when the front rowers, like even Willie Mason, they just become smarter.
Okay, yeah.
So they used to find you. When you first started off, the big blokes just wanted to prove how big they are. So they would want to run at the big blokes. So they just wanted to beat their chest and their egos, which sort of kept them away from the little blokes. But when they actually got smarter, like your Jason Riles and your Willie Masons and your Josh Perrys, they'd just find you all the time. They'd pick you out in the line. You'd be making, you'd have to tackle them where you used to sort of avoid that. But when they start picking you out and naming you and telling their teammates there it is, you know that they're out to get you. So Mark O'Mealy was the same. But on the other hand, I remember Mark O'Malley was funny, and he used to sit in the scrum. He goes, "Make sure you don't run around me today." And I said, "Well, you just don't run at me, and we'll come up with a deal." So,
fair enough.
But yeah, once they worked out that they could get some fast play of the balls around you and all that stuff, the game got a lot tougher.
Yeah, definitely. Is there a player that you wanted to play with or against that you didn't get the opportunity to play against or with?
Oh, not particularly. No, your teammates are your teammates. You build that base, during pre-season. Once you go into battle, once you take that field, you're just going in the battle for your teammate. It doesn't matter who you're alongside. Once you cross that white line, it's hard to. You just don't leave anything you don't leave anything off the pitch because it's too hard. It's too hard a game. If you go in there and you're not ready, the game is so much harder. So anything we do, especially with Jed, and any advice I give him is just make sure he's ready to play every week. And, that's just getting your mind ready. And getting your mind ready for full contact every week was sometimes challenging, especially being a smaller bloke. So
definitely.
You'd have to get your head right. And that's why I used to go and do my extras, just to get that mental side of it, knowing what was coming. So, to get that longevity out of the body was something I am quite proud of, being a smaller player, that you can get that many games out.
Yeah.
It certainly wasn't easy at times, yeah.
No, that's for sure. We'll wrap things up with a quick top 10 and the set of 6 questions. Now, the quick top 10 is basically a yes, no, or you can elaborate on it if you want to, but we'll start off with a barbecue or tomato sauce.
Barbecue.
The second part of that question is, where do you keep it?
In the fridge.
Ooh, okay. I'm a cupboard person, but that's all right. That's always debatable. On a plane, window or aisle seat?
Aisle.
Nice. Pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
Yes.
Tea or coffee?
Both. Coffee, generally. Coffee.
Okay, yeah, nice. Arnold or Sylvester? In terms of Arnold Schwarzenegger or Sylvester Stallone?
Sylvester.
Yeah, good choice. Good choice. McDonald's or KFC?
Ooh, I'm a Macca's man, I think. Cheeseburger man.
Ooh, nice. Just quickly, did you have a post-game meal after a game that you used to always go to?
Oh, before game. I had a before-game meal. After the game was whatever, but before a game was always spaghetti. My wife used to make homemade schnitzel with spaghetti on top, like the old no-names.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so that was our go-to. Nearly every game.
Nice. Are you a morning or a night person?
Morning.
Do you prefer summer or winter?
Winter.
Coke or Pepsi?
Coke.
Now, this one probably applies mainly when you were playing. I don't know, it might do now, but cardio or weights? Which do you prefer?
Neither. Probably weights, yeah.
Yeah, nice. Well, the set of 6 questions, and we'll start off with, what's your favourite sport outside of rugby league?
Soccer.
Okay, yeah. You mentioned that one at the top there. Favourite holiday destination?
Oh, I like Thailand. I've been to Thailand a few times with my wife. We went on our honeymoon there and we just met some English friends there. Yeah, I just love chilling out in Thailand. It's good.
Nice. Who would be the most famous person you'd love to meet, either dead or alive, and have a chat with?
Jesus, toughy. Geez, you put you on the spot there. Thierry Henry, Arsenal player. He was a great player. I used to love watching him. I'd love to sit down with him for half an hour for sure.
Nice. What's your specialty dish in the kitchen or on the barbecue?
Sausage pasta salad. Pasta I make.
Okay,
it was a Jamie Oliver recipe. So I introduced it. I don't introduce many, but I introduced that to the boys, and I cooked it one day, and we have it. My wife's mastered it now, so she does it. But yeah, I cooked it a couple of times, and the kids loved it. So yeah, because I introduced it, that's mine.
Well, I mean, this will be a tough answer for you, but does she cook it better than you, or
she does?
You did the original, so
the boys. I think the boys appreciate it when I cook it, and
Okay.
they're going to, because we're boys dominated, they take my side most of the time. So Justin definitely nails it better than me for sure.
Nice. Favourite musician or band to listen to?
I love Red Hot Chili Peppers. I love them, but I like all the old music. I'm an old. Some of the tunes I listen to, I've actually got my Jed listens to them.
Okay.
So some of them are real old and Ricky Nelson and all those type of oldies.
What's your favourite Chili Peppers song?
Under the Bridge is my favourite.
Yeah, that's a classic. And the last one, which 3 former teammates do you think you wouldn't want to be on a deserted island with, and why?
Steve Carter now for one. Mick Vella.
Okay, yeah, his name gets mentioned a lot when I ask about the pest or prankster question.
Steve Carter, Mick Vella. Who else is there? Those two
Definitely, yep.
Yeah, those two definitely. Third one, I can't think of anyone off the top of my head.
Nah, that's all right. That's fine. Well, Brad Drew, thank you very much for joining me today on the Parrot Cave podcast. I've really enjoyed the chat. And a player that played at the club that I love, the Parramatta Eels, and also a contributor to the Parrot Cave with a bit of memorabilia hanging up proudly in the Parrot Cave. So thank you for joining me today.
Thanks, Troy. Thanks for having me, mate. I know it's been a while coming, but I do listen to you, mate, and you're doing a great job, bud. Enjoy it.
How you going, mate? Are you a Parrot Cave podcast listener?
I am, bro. It's a great podcast. Everyone tune in.
Go Parrot. And yes, welcome back to the podcast, and thank you very much for listening to Brad and his rugby league story. As I said at the top, I really enjoyed the chat with Brad, especially that Parramatta Eels talk. That was really, really interesting. So thank you once again, Brad, for coming onto the podcast. I really appreciate it. And look, if you enjoyed that chat with Brad, please share it with your family and friends as well. It is available on Apple, Spotify, and all the usual podcast platforms. You'll also find the podcast on Instagram, Twitter and Facebook as well, so check that one out, give that one a follow. I'd really appreciate that one as well. And if you would like to support the podcast, if you enjoy the content that comes your way each and every week, then you can support the podcast, because as you may or may not know, it does cost a little bit of money to run a podcast with all the things that are involved in bringing you a podcast each and every week. But you can support the podcast by buying the podcast a coffee, a little bit of a charity driver, I guess you could say, with help that will help go towards the production costs basically of the podcast. So I put the link in the show notes, so you can check that one out. It is also in the link tree of the Instagram bio as well, so you can check that one out. And if you would like to support the podcast, if you enjoy it, then please buy a coffee. That would be most appreciated. Heaps of content coming through the podcast each and every week. The tipping podcast, the interview-based podcast, the game day preview podcast, review podcast, any breaking news to do with Parramatta podcasts. Coming your way. If there's anything that you would like to see on the podcast, please just send me a message, and if we can get around to doing it, or we'll make time to do it, then we'll do that on the podcast, because that's why I enjoy doing this for you guys, the fans of rugby league. That is what it is all about. At the end of the day, that is what it is all about, the fans of rugby league and the listeners. I really appreciate the support. And look, there's some support from all over the globe. You may or may not have seen a couple of weeks ago, I had many a listener from the United States of America. I was actually I think it was the 109th ranked sports podcast in New Zealand last week. So thank you very much, and a shout out to all my New Zealand listeners out there. I really appreciate the support. Thank you very much for listening. Obviously, my Australian listeners, I really appreciate that one as well, because that's probably where most of my listens come from each and every week. But look, there's also Austria as well, and I know who that one is. That is Mr. Chris Ricketts, who is over there, has his own podcast as well. Put a line through the podcast, so check that one out as well if you like a little bit of other entertainment. The UK as well, Hong Kong, Indonesia. So look, the podcast is going global. So thank you very much, everyone, for your support and listening to it. I hope you really enjoy it. Look, that's all from this podcast. I know it's a little bit of a long one. If you would like to, I'll throw this question out to you guys. If you would like the interview-based podcast split into 2 episodes, so for example, an hour-long podcast, if you like that split into 2, please let me know if that is your listening preference, or just leave it as the way it is. Just let me know. Happy to accommodate you guys, the listeners, because that's who I'm here to entertain. Thank you very much for listening, and stay tuned for the next podcast, which no doubt will be the game day preview podcast. The Eels taking on the Warriors over in New Zealand. The Parracave podcast, by the fan, for the fans. Go Para!
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Parracave Podcast.